Hello everyone and welcome to MT Solar's new Autodesigner tool. My name is Jamie and I'm going to go over how to use this tool and some troubleshooting tips. So the first step is to start with a new and clean page, and you can do that by doing a hard refresh. I recommend doing this every time you run a design or make a change to it. That keeps all the data clean in the program and helps it run nice and smooth. So if you're on a Mac, to do a hard refresh, it's Command R. If you're on a Windows, it's Shift Control R. The next step is to name your project ID something unique. So I'm going to go ahead and just name this Jamie's house. And don't use any kind of special characters or spaces. That tends to confuse the program and get it kind of bungled up. So just, keep it straightforward. And then I always use something like Rev A, B, C, etc. That way, if you make a change to the design down the way, say you add modules or the module dimensions change, then you can keep this nice and clean, and it really helps you to know which design you're going to use when it comes down to the end of getting this all figured out. Okay, so moving on, the next step is to put in an address. I like to put in a full address. That usually works the best. Sometimes you can use in city and state, but basically what the address does is it pulls from a national database for wind and snow loads in the area. So you're going to want to do mostly the full address that gets the most detailed and correct information. If you are in a case study area on the lookup database, that generally means you have either a local jurisdiction overrides or a weather anomaly that normally specifies higher loads. In that case, you will need to go get those numbers from your local AHJ or permitting office. And the next step is your module dimensions and quantity. So this affects the entire design of the mount, whether it's going to be 15-foot pole spacing, 22 and a half, over one pole, two pole, three poles. So that really depends on how many modules you're looking at and what their size are. So say for this 12 module mount, if I go from a 65-inch module to, say, a 90-inch module, it gives you a visualization of what that looks like. And it looks like it takes it to 84-inch wings rather than the 45 that were on it before. Now let's say we want 24 modules. And we've got a 17-foot pole spacing and 45-inch wings here. If you change your module to 90 inches, we're jumping up to 3 poles, 70-foot pole spacing and a 24-inch wing. And you can kind of move this around, see what it looks like from different angles, from top. That really helps to give you a nice visual of what your mount is going to look like. So let's go with a 16 module mount, 87 by 42 panel. And that's what our design is going to look like. The next thing I will show you, this is kind of handy, is you can take off the modules and rails by clicking these little check boxes up here. That gives you a good view of the frame itself, or if you want to see rail spacing, modules, you can also view it that way. Okay, moving on, we're going to talk about tilt a little bit. The general rule is 45 degrees is something to keep in mind if you have high wind or snow loads. Think about 5 degrees as a tabletop and 90 degrees as a wind sail or billboard. If you have high wind areas, try flattening out the tilt, and that will help you to get that to pass. If you have high snow areas, try making that tilt a little bit steeper, and that will also help these calculations to pass. So I'm just going to keep it right there at 30 degrees, and I'm going to go up to a 7-foot front edge ground clearance. Ground clearance is something that's really important. We always recommend a 5-foot minimum with our products. The reason being is vandalism or any kind of animals passing by could damage the modules. Any vegetation growing up from the ground can damage the modules, which is something we have actually seen quite a bit. Snow buildup, especially if you're in a high snow area like I am, snow building up on the ground and also from sliding off of the mount can cause some damage. And a lot of places have codes that require any wiring lower than 8 feet to have a fence around them, which can cause shading on your mount and extra cost to your project. So that's always something to keep in mind as well. And then exposure category. I live in a wooded area, so I'm going to go ahead and select B for sheltered. Any of these that have a little eye next to them do give you a little bit of an extra detail. So if you just hover over that eye, it gives you a good description of what B, C, or D mean. And with this design, a complementary foundation will be provided with the structural calculations. This design is to use soil class 4, which is sand, and a 48 by 48 inch square concrete foundation. If you wish to have a different soil class considered for the foundation design or a different size, a full geotech report will be needed, at which point it kind of makes more sense for you to work with a geotech engineer or local PE to design that foundation, and that'll keep your costs down as well. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and we'll see what it looks like. So you'll just hit that green check button, and it's going to come up with little updates right here that'll kind of tell you what it's doing. This usually takes about a minute to 2 minutes, depending on how big the mount is. The smaller ones are quite quick. The larger ones can take a couple minutes to go through. So we'll just kind of watch this process. Okay, and once you see the pretty colors, you know that it is almost finished with its engineering calculations, and you're about to be able to proceed to get your pricing. Okay, so this is running at 72% utilization. And basically what that means is that is the percent of loading forces that you are seeing on the mount itself. Now, if this were to be failing or higher than 90%, it will show you some numbers down here that tell you which members are failing. In that case, you can hit this little eyeball and go to check member plate IDs. And that shows you what all of these members are. So if this were to fail and it said 101 right there, you know that it's the pole that's failing and that you need a larger pole. Or if it says, 12 and 112 or 5 and 105, then you know it's that pivot pipe that is having most of the stress on it, and that's what's failing. Anytime it's failing, usually it's a good thing to mess with your tilt, depending on what your wind and snow loads are. You may need to reduce your front edge ground clearance, or sometimes you need to reduce the size of the mount. Say you're trying to do a large one, like 50 modules, and you just can't get it to pass. Try breaking it into 225 module mounts, and oftentimes that will help that to pass. So the next step is we're going to hit Get Instant Quote. And this usually takes about around 30 seconds to generate. Again, the smaller the mount, the quicker it is. The larger, the slower. Okay, and that's loading. So here is your 3D model. You can turn this to look at any side you want, kind of get a feel for what it looks like. That looks really good to me. That's a nice looking mount. So if you like what you see, everything looks good, it's something the customer wants, you can go ahead and hit proceed to quote. I also like to copy these URLs. That way I have them for reference and I can pull them up when I'm at the kitchen table or out in the field with the customer. So go ahead and hit proceed to quote. Again, this will take about 30 seconds or so depending on the size of the mount. You can see it's working on that. And now you have a nice little product. So my pricing here is $7,102.41. And here is my SKU. The 2P stands for 2 poles, 17 feet apart, center to center. It's a 6-inch pole, standard duty frame with 24-inch wings in a 4x4 configuration. These last 4 digits here are a unique identifier or reference number. So if you ever call in and want to talk about a specific mount or SKU, that is a really good way for us to be able to look up all of your information. You can also go ahead and go down here for additional information, and this kind of just shows you a little bit more of what was on that original SkyCiv report, as well as a downloadable PDF. And this is something you can also download and take over to your customer. Okay, so from here you can go ahead and add that into your cart, and you can take all of this off to the customer. So now you have a price, you have a PDF, you have a 3D design, and then when you're ready to proceed, you can go ahead and look at your shipping options. I need a liftgate because I don't have a forklift on site, and you can go ahead and proceed to checkout from there. Fill out your billing information, your shipping information. I always put the project name in the notes. Continue. And then from here, you can go ahead and pay for it and place your order or save it as a quote. All right, so that pretty much covers everything. Thank you guys for joining me today. I hope that answers a lot of your questions. Have a wonderful day. Cheers.